Welcome back to Turkish series stars, the corner of the internet where the flash of headlines slows just enough for us to hear what the heart is saying beneath them. If you're new, subscribe, tap join to power our deep dives, and turn on notifications so you never miss the stories that move a nation. Today's chapter isn't about glittering premieres or viral romances. It's about a silence that has shaken an entire audience, a silence that says as much as any confession, and perhaps more. In the restless engine of Turkey's entertainment world, few figures remain both luminous and elusive like Elçin. Her performances flicker with feeling, her choices off-camera are measured, almost ceremonial in their restraint. That careful quiet met an unexpected storm this week. When the grandmother of her former partner, Barış, was laid to rest in Istanbul, Elçin did not appear among the mourners. What could have been a private goodbye turned into a nation's open question, and a family's grief became a stage none of them asked for. The funeral unfolded beneath a sky so leaden it felt unwilling to move. An old mosque watched over the city with its centuries of memory, its stone cool with the weight of long-ago prayers. Inside, a cross-section of Turkish life gathered, producers, actors, friends from the earliest days, public servants and quiet neighbors, all crowded shoulder to shoulder, bound by the gravity of loss. The air hummed with the soft shuffle of shoes and the breath of whispered blessings. Cameras kept their distance at first, but their lenses were still there, catching tremors no one intended to show. Standing within that solemn choreography was Barış. The camera did not have to look hard to find his grief. He held it like something too heavy for words, his posture betraying what his mouth could not shape. His mother clasped her husband's arm the way a person holds on when the ground is unsteady. In that fragile stillness, a murmur rose. It didn't take long for 3 words to puncture the hush. Where is Elçin? Her absence became a presence of its own. It lingered over the crowd, drifted into phones, burst onto timelines. Within minutes, the story escaped the confines of a courtyard and raced into trending lists, commentary threads, and televised panels. The nation pivoted toward a new debate. Was Elçin's quiet a form of respect, or was it a wound? Hours passed. Then, a post. No caption, no explanation. A black background, nothing but darkness, and a single red carnation emoji. It was small enough to miss and large enough to be impossible to ignore. To some, that image said, I am mourning without taking the room away from those who need it. To others, it felt like a curt nod where a human hand was expected, a digital bow in place of a step toward shared sorrow. So the public did what the public does. Camps formed. Lines were drawn. She's protecting her peace, one corner declared. Compassion demands presence, shouted another. As the arguments tumbled over each other, the difference between solidarity and scorn grew harder to hear. Talk shows parsed the quiet like it was a poem left on a doorstep. Columnists and insiders traded interpretations as if they had cracked a code. What should have remained sacred became a referendum on duty, dignity, and the choreography of goodbye. Behind the noise, those close to Elçin whispered a different story. A friend, speaking softly and reluctantly, said she had wrestled with the decision all night. She feared that a single camera flash would yank the day away from its purpose. She didn't want to turn someone else's farewell into a headline about herself, the friend explained. She believed the most loving thing was to step back and let the memory of a cherished woman be the focus. According to this account, the black square wasn't emptiness, it was a chosen hush, a way of saying I see you, I remember, without inviting a spectacle. Emotions, however, do not often heed strategy. On the other side of the aisle, grief was raw. Several attendees say they heard Barış lean toward a friend and murmur, his voice thin with fatigue, that humanity asks for a few words. He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. It was a desire as old as mourning itself, not for a performance, just for acknowledgement, something simple and kind. Then came a voice that cut through far beyond the courtyard. His mother stepped into the public light and offered a sentence that landed like a stone dropped into still water. On such days, pride should be set aside. We expected a little respect. Not coming leaves wounds. She didn't call anyone out. She didn't need to. By dusk, those words, steady, aching, plain, were everywhere. Soon the story refused to stay within national borders. Italian tabloids found it, wrapped it in the silk of their own romantic shorthand. They published photos of summers steeped in light, when Elçin and Barış, back when they were still a constellation, visited the grandmother in coastal towns. Olive groves and evening tea, seaside laughter drifting into the blue hour, that's how the coverage framed it. Absence, they said, felt most bitter where joy had once been abundant, and the contradictions made for irresistible copy. And as if the narrative needed more fuel, a familiar whisper resurfaced, talk of an Italian model rumored to have brushed against the edges of the couple's past. She did not appear at the funeral either. That didn't stop commentators from folding her silhouette into the myth, suggesting that Elçin's distance reopened an old door, or finally shut it for good. The air thickened, not with tears this time, but with speculation so dense it was hard to breathe. The public split, again and again, as if mirroring a private fracture. One side framed Elçin's choice as quiet grace, a refusal to turn mourning into theater. The other labeled it cold, calling the carnation a stand-in for compassion that should have arrived in person. Where is the line, someone typed, between self-care and selfishness? Another asked, when the cameras are watching, can kindness stay unperformed? These were more than questions about one actress and one actor. They became questions about us, how we measure love after love's shape has changed, how we honor bonds that no longer define us yet still belong to our story. All the while, Turkish series stars gathered the threads, not to judge, but to listen. What makes a gesture respectful in an age when sorrow trends by lunchtime? What does a real goodbye look like when millions are waiting to debate whether it qualifies? When do we protect our own quiet, and when do we set it aside so another pain can settle into ours? Meanwhile, the industry had its say. Psychologists spoke about boundaries and the toll of perpetual visibility. Actors, veterans of scripted grief, confessed how difficult it is to make private space when your face is public property. Critics argued over whether Elçin's post was a coded message, a reminder that love rarely evaporates, it just translates, or a controlled silence meant to invite reflection without inviting vulnerability. Between theories and think pieces lies a truth only she holds, and perhaps will never share. Those who remember the grandmother remember warmth, a humor that softened edges, a presence that could turn a crowded table into a haven. Some recall that she and Elçin cooked together into the small hours more than once, trading recipes and stories like heirlooms. It's easy to imagine, in that frame, why a woman who cherished peace might inspire a farewell that refused noise. In that light, the black screen and single red carnation read less like distance and more like a whisper across a memory, I haven't forgotten. And yet, the question lingers. Is silence ever enough? Can a symbol carry what a face might have carried in its quiet, a hand might have offered in a light squeeze, an embrace might have held for a few extra seconds? Or would her stepping onto those stones have fractured the day into flashes and opinion pieces anyway, robbing a family of the right to mourn without a stage? Istanbul, relentless as ever, resumed its rhythm. Horns and calls braided into a familiar chorus, markets woke and argued and laughed, and the city carried on. But the echo of this story sticks to the edges. In every reaction, we see ourselves, our own rules for decency, our thresholds for injury, our hunger for proof and our suspicion of performance. Some of us believe that a person owes presence no matter the past, others feel that one's piece is not a theater ticket to be demanded on cue. The truth, as always, is difficult, human, and messy. As the arguments fade to a low simmer, one thing remains impossible to deny. A family lost a matriarch, a man stood in grief, and a woman made a choice she must live with. Perhaps, in time, the sharp edges dull. Perhaps a private call was made off camera, a message sent, a memory shared that no one will ever see. Perhaps not. What we do know is that silence is not empty. It is full of intention, sometimes brave, sometimes clumsy, sometimes both at once. So what do you believe? Was Elçin's decision a quiet bow toward a life she didn't want to eclipse, or a missed moment that will keep aching long after the flowers have withered? Where does compassion end and privacy begin? Tell us in the comments. Let's talk like people who understand that love can remain without possession, that respect can be asked for and denied, that grief is not a performance even when the world is watching. If this story moved you, subscribe to Turkish series stars, hit like, and tap join so we can keep bringing you the complicated, beating heart truths behind the headlines. Here, we try to remember that every quiet carries meaning, and every choice belongs to a person who has to sleep with it at night. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and listen closely. The calmest moments often speak the loudest.